Marissa Kane was the devout mother everyone trusted, and Robert Kane was the husband who believed in her prayers until the night she stood over him with a knife, trading her family's peace for the promise of freedom and a life insurance payout that would never come. Deer Park was a small place with neat houses lined up along tree-shadowed streets, where people left their doors unlocked and waved at each other every morning. The children played on cracked sidewalks, mothers shared recipes over fences, and the biggest excitement was the church bake sale on weekends. In the middle of this quiet life was Marissa Kane, a 36-year-old mother of two who was known for her kindness and her faith. She wore floral dresses and kept her hair tied back, her hands always busy preparing cookies for the Sunday school or helping elderly neighbors carry groceries inside. She attended every prayer circle, always sitting in the front row with her Bible open on her lap, nodding as the pastor spoke about forgiveness and strength in hard times. She was the woman people trusted with their secrets and their children, someone everyone admired and believed was living the life everyone in Deer Park wanted for themselves. Marissa's husband, Robert, was a construction manager, quiet and sturdy, often seen mowing the lawn while Marissa waved from the kitchen window with a cup of tea in her hand. They looked like the perfect family. On weekends, they took their kids to the local park, sitting under the big oak tree while the children ran through the grass, and neighbors would comment on how lucky they were to have such a happy, faithful household in their community. No one ever imagined that inside that pretty white house with the blue shutters and flower boxes under the windows, something dark was growing in silence. It was a clear October morning when everything changed in Deer Park. A delivery man arrived with a package and found the front door slightly open, an unusual sight for the Kane house. He called out, but no one answered. Stepping inside, he smelled something metallic, and when he reached the kitchen, he saw Robert Kane lying on the floor, a dark pool spreading around him, staining the bright white tiles a deep red. The knife was on the counter, its blade clean, but glinting under the kitchen light, like it had been carefully placed there for someone to find. The house was cold and silent except for the sound of Marissa crying, her body shaking as she sat in the living room, holding her Bible against her chest. Her eyes were red and swollen, and she kept whispering that she found him that way, that she didn't know what to do, that she prayed and prayed for him to get up, but he didn't. Her children were at a neighbor's house for a sleepover, spared from the horror inside their home, while Marissa repeated that she had no idea who would do this to Robert, insisting he was a good man, that they were a good family. The police arrived, the small street quickly filled with flashing lights and neighbors gathering, whispering behind hands as they tried to understand how something like this could happen in Deer Park. People who had shared meals and prayers with Marissa watched her being led outside, covered in a blanket, her eyes empty as she stared at the front yard where her children had played only days before. The crime scene was a mess of tragedy and confusion, but one thing was clear: there were no signs of a break-in, no shattered windows, no forced doors. Whoever killed Robert Kane had come in quietly and left just as quietly, leaving behind a scene that would haunt Deer Park for years. As investigators started their work, collecting evidence and photographing the house that once felt warm and safe, neighbors stood outside, clutching each other, wondering how such horror could happen to the woman who had been the symbol of faith and kindness in their town. The perfect life of Marissa Kane, the devoted mother who never missed a Sunday service, was now a puzzle with dark pieces no one had seen before, and the calm, quiet streets of Deer Park would never feel the same again. While the people of Deer Park filled Marissa's porch with casseroles and flowers, whispering prayers and promises of support, the detectives began piecing together a trail that didn't match the gentle image Marissa showed to the world. Everyone in town saw a grieving widow, a mother holding her children close while tears streamed down her face. Yet behind the kitchen's crime scene tape, the officers noticed that the murder had been too precise for a random act of violence. The knife had been wiped clean except for faint traces under the handle, and there was no sign of forced entry. The back door was locked from the inside, and nothing was missing from the house. Robert's wallet, watch, and phone were still on the dining table, untouched. It looked like someone had come with a single purpose and left without rushing. The detectives obtained security footage from nearby houses and street cameras, and one camera caught Marissa's car leaving her driveway around midnight and returning roughly an hour later. Marissa told the officers she had slept through the night, insisting she only woke up to find Robert unresponsive on the kitchen floor at dawn. When asked about the footage, she explained she had driven to clear her mind, parking by the lake for air, but she couldn't remember exactly how long she stayed there. Her explanation was soft and trembling, and the officers noted how her eyes darted to the floor when she answered. Robert's autopsy revealed that he had been drugged before he was attacked, with sleeping pills in his system strong enough to make him drowsy but not completely unconscious, explaining the defensive wounds on his arms where he tried to fight back. The medical examiner's report was delivered quietly to the lead detective, who read it with growing unease as he realized the prescription for those same pills was in Marissa's name, filled just 1 week before the murder. Neighbors who had admired Marissa's faithfulness began to remember small moments that now felt unsettling. They recalled hearing Robert and Marissa argue behind closed windows late at night, though the couple would appear together at church the next day, Robert holding her hand while she smiled politely at those who approached them. A friend mentioned Robert had complained about money being tight and hinted that he felt something was off with Marissa's spending habits, but he quickly dropped the topic, embarrassed to speak badly about his wife. The financial records that the investigators obtained showed large, unaccounted-for cash withdrawals from Marissa's shared account with Robert, and credit card debts that Robert seemed unaware of, adding tension to the image of the perfect family. Church members who had adored Marissa started to question how she had afforded the new clothes she sometimes wore, or the unexpected purchases that showed up in their home. It turned out Marissa had quietly sold jewelry that had been passed down in Robert's family, pawning items while telling friends they had simply been cleaning out clutter. While Marissa continued to attend prayer vigils for Robert, standing with bowed head as hymns echoed through the church, investigators saw a different story forming behind her quiet tears. It was a story of quiet deception, where a mother who presented herself as the heart of faith in the community was quietly hiding cracks that were beginning to widen. Each prayer vigil, each soft sob she let out in front of neighbors, felt like a performance layered over secrets. The more the detectives pulled at the details of Marissa's life, the more they found shadows under the bright image she had so carefully maintained. They discovered she had debts she could no longer hide, a family she was about to lose, and a husband who had discovered her lies just before he was found dead on the kitchen floor. As the quiet streets of Deer Park held their breath, waiting for the truth to surface, the investigation into Robert Kane's murder turned from quiet suspicion to grim certainty as the detectives uncovered pieces of Marissa's secret life that she had hidden behind Sunday smiles and charity drives. Robert had taken out a life insurance policy worth $500,000 when their youngest child was born, naming Marissa as the sole beneficiary. He believed he was securing their children's future if anything ever happened to him, never suspecting that the promise of that money would become a motive for betrayal. Just a week before his death, Robert had called the insurance company, requesting to change the beneficiary, stating he and Marissa were having marital issues and that he wanted the children's future protected, but he never managed to complete the paperwork before his death. The detectives discovered that Marissa had opened secret online accounts for gambling and shopping, her debts quietly growing to over $60,000 as she tried to fill a loneliness she never admitted to anyone. In the daylight, she baked for church and dropped off donations at the food bank, but at night, she sat in front of her laptop, scrolling through online gambling sites and transferring money she couldn't afford to lose. She had tried to hide the debts from Robert, moving money around in their joint accounts, pawning off jewelry, and making excuses for missing funds. It became clear Robert had discovered the missing money and confronted Marissa just days before he died, telling her he was planning to leave and take the children with him, that he couldn't trust her anymore. Police traced Marissa's online activity, finding late-night searches for how to make someone unconscious without them knowing, fastest way to kill quietly, and life insurance payout rules after spouse death. They found messages between Marissa and a man she met in a late-night chat room, a man who believed she was a single mother desperate to escape an abusive marriage. In those messages, Marissa told him she was ready to leave her old life, that she needed to be free, that soon everything would be handled. The man, living 2 towns over, told the detectives he never knew Marissa was married and denied any involvement in the murder, claiming he had believed everything she told him online. The night Robert was murdered, Marissa's car was seen on a gas station camera, where she was filling up, dressed in dark clothes, glancing nervously around before getting back into the driver's seat. Her phone location data placed her near the outskirts of town for nearly 40 minutes before returning home, during the window when the medical examiner determined Robert had been killed. Police found the prescription sleeping pills used to drug Robert were filled in Marissa's name, and the pharmacy confirmed she had picked them up herself, smiling and thanking the staff as she left. The detectives pieced together the timeline. Robert had been drugged during dinner, began feeling tired, and likely fell asleep on the couch before waking up confused and weak as Marissa approached him with a knife in the kitchen, leading to the defensive wounds on his arms. Marissa then wiped the knife, placed it carefully on the counter, and staged the scene before calling for help in the morning, clutching her Bible as if it could shield her from what she had done. As Marissa continued to stand in front of the community as a grieving wife, investigators were building a case that showed she had been living a double life, balancing the image of a devout mother with hidden plans fueled by desperation and debt. The truth that was emerging was darker than anyone in Deer Park could have imagined, and the faith that once made Marissa the symbol of hope in her community was now the cloak she had used to hide the truth as she planned her escape, leaving behind a husband she once promised to love forever, now cold on the kitchen floor. Marissa's arrest shattered the calm of Deer Park, as police officers walked into the small church during a morning service, quietly handcuffing her in front of the congregation. Gasps filled the air as her Bible dropped to the floor, sliding across the polished wood as the hymn that was being sung faltered, voices breaking as neighbors and friends watched the woman they once admired being led away. Outside, the summer sun burned brightly, children clutched their mothers, and the pastor simply lowered his head as Marissa was guided into the waiting patrol car, her face pale, her eyes fixed on the church she once called her sanctuary. In the days that followed, Deer Park was no longer the peaceful community it once was. News vans lined the streets, capturing shots of the Kane house, where the white curtains still moved softly in the breeze, a reminder of the quiet deception that had lived behind those walls. People whispered in grocery store aisles, recalling moments when Marissa's smile felt too perfect, or how Robert had once looked tired as he left for work, never speaking about what was weighing on him. The prayers for Marissa became quiet, replaced by hushed questions about who she really was. The evidence against Marissa was overwhelming. Forensic reports showed partial prints under the clean surface of the knife, matching Marissa's thumb. The prescription for the sleeping pills traced back to her, and the pharmacy staff remembered her calm, smiling face when she picked them up. The financial records laid bare her hidden debts, the gambling accounts, the cash withdrawals she had taken while Robert was at work, and the pawn shop receipts for jewelry she had secretly sold to pay off losing bets. The messages to the man she met online painted a portrait of a woman who felt trapped and desperate, telling him she would soon be free and take control of her life. Messages sent only days before Robert's murder. Witnesses testified that Robert had discovered Marissa's financial lies and had confronted her days before he was killed, telling her he wanted to change the life insurance beneficiary and leave with the children to start over. Investigators believed this was the turning point for Marissa, the moment she realized she could lose everything: her children, her home, her carefully constructed image in the community would all be taken from her, leaving her alone with debts she could not pay. The life insurance became her escape, a way to clear her debts and rebuild a new life, while maintaining the image of a grieving widow. In court, Marissa's defense team tried to paint her as a loving mother overwhelmed by stress and emotional strain, insisting she was innocent and had no reason to harm Robert. But the prosecution presented the timeline, the evidence of planning, the search history, and the financial motive, all pointing toward Marissa's quiet calculation. The jury listened, the weight of each piece of evidence settling in the silent courtroom, as neighbors who once brought Marissa food now watched her with cold, questioning eyes. When the verdict was read, finding Marissa Kane guilty of first-degree murder, the courtroom was so quiet that even the shuffle of papers sounded loud. Marissa remained still, her face blank, as if the reality of what she had done and what she had lost was only beginning to reach her. In that moment, her children, now under the care of family friends, sat in the back, not fully understanding, their innocence forever tied to the memory of the mother who once kissed them goodnight while hiding secrets that would destroy their family. Deer Park changed after that day, the Kane house standing empty, the church services quieter, with people glancing around, wondering what secrets others might be hiding. The image of Marissa Kane, once the symbol of faith and community, now became the reminder that darkness can hide behind the calmest smile, and that the perfect life people envied was, in truth, a carefully built lie that ended in blood on a kitchen floor. Marissa Kane sat in her prison cell, the gray walls pressing in on her as she traced the cracks on the floor with her eyes, trying to block out the whispers of the past that followed her everywhere. The sound of the verdict still echoed in her mind, the word guilty hanging over her like a curse she could never pray away. She once believed she was a master at hiding her truth, wrapping herself in prayer circles and charity work, her Bible always within reach, her smile a constant shield. But behind closed doors, her reality had crumbled, and now the world saw her not as a devoted mother, but as a murderer who tore apart her own family for money and freedom. The people of Deer Park struggled to move on from the betrayal that had rotted their peaceful streets. The Kane house stood empty, the for sale sign swaying slightly with the breeze as children crossed the street to avoid walking in front of it. Weeds grew along the garden beds Marissa once tended, and the curtains inside remained drawn, a constant reminder of the day Robert's body was found on the kitchen floor. Neighbors whispered about the family they once adored, exchanging stories about Marissa's kindness and her carefully rehearsed warmth, questioning how much of it had ever been real. Marissa's children were placed with relatives, their days filled with counseling appointments and quiet moments of confusion, their childhood interrupted by the weight of what their mother had done. Their father's absence was a wound that never closed, and their mother's betrayal became a shadow over every holiday and every birthday, leaving them to grow up with unanswered questions. They received letters from Marissa, carefully written from prison, filled with prayers and verses, but the children often left them unopened, unable to reconcile the mother who kissed them good night with the woman who destroyed their home. The town's church struggled with the memory of Marissa's presence in the front pew, her hands folded in prayer, her tears falling during hymns as she asked for strength. The pastor often paused before beginning his sermons, remembering how Marissa once organized charity drives and led prayer circles, her voice steady as she read verses about forgiveness. The congregation found themselves questioning the true nature of the people around them, trust frayed in the wake of Marissa's deception. The police officers who worked on the case carried the memory of the investigation with them, the images of the crime scene burned into their minds, the cold calculation behind the murder haunting them during sleepless nights. They remembered how calmly Marissa had spoken during questioning, how she clutched her Bible, her eyes hollow as she recited her timeline, never admitting what she had done, even as the evidence closed in around her. Marissa's trial became a story passed down in Deer Park, a cautionary tale whispered between neighbors and repeated during late-night conversations, a reminder that darkness can hide behind the most devoted face. The insurance money Marissa hoped would free her never came, tied up in legal disputes and eventually redirected to her children, who would someday receive it, a bitter inheritance born from their mother's betrayal. In the end, Marissa Kane remained a prisoner of her choices, her faith twisted into a weapon she used to hide her desperation, her prayers a thin veil over a plan she could never take back. The brutal murder that rocked Deer Park was not the work of a stranger or a random act of violence, but of a mother who believed her secret life could stay hidden, who thought she could erase her debts and failures by taking a life. But the truth surfaced, leaving her alone behind bars, while the town she once charmed slowly learned to live with the silence left behind.